following the September the 11th attacks. BBC Radio 4 News.
Now, Gary Oldman gives a virtuoso solo performance in the Friday play Walk Right By Me by Christopher C. Harris, a compelling insight into the life of a passionate, eccentric and lonely man.
Once, when I was little, Mr. James, the headmaster, announced to the school that David King, a boy in my class, had drowned during the summer holidays, and that we were all to close our eyes and remember him. But I kept my eyes open. Not because I was being disrespectful to David, but because my dad had only just died too, and there was still a part of me that half expected him to show up sometime, and if I closed my eyes, even for a second, I might just miss him. I remember it was hot, and I was sitting by an open window, and although everyone around me was crying, it was kind of okay, because I could feel the sun on my arms, and this soft breeze on my neck. And I also had this feeling that someone was watching me. So I turned round. Outside was the road, and although there wasn't anybody there, it didn't stop me from recognising who it was that I couldn't see. It was me. Only I was older. Like from the future. Then years later, when I was working at the sorting office in the storeroom, I got the same feeling all over again that I was being watched. So I stared back, just at the shelves and stuff, but there was me again. Only now I was a little boy, sitting in an open window, smiling. A big smile across time that said, "It's okay. You were watching me back then when I needed it, and now I'm watching you. Because let's face it, there isn't anybody else. Not anymore." Maybe it should have scared me a little, seeing things. But it didn't. It was kind of comforting. I wasn't at all well at the time. I was already on pills for my nerves. But then Mum died, and that really knocked me for six. And then I saw Carol. Although that was months later after I'd lost my job, but I figured I'd never have to look backwards or forwards again, because I'd found someone real to watch over and to worry about. But that was stupid too. I realise that now, because the look's got to be both ways. Otherwise, who's watching over you? I might just as well not exist. But then I'm not the only one. Think of all the people who have passed close by you in the street, stood next to you in a lift, in a crowded room, a changing room, a shower, seen you in your underwear, naked even, lay beside you on a beach, sat next to you in a cinema or a theatre. Maybe you even touched, brushed against each other. The fibres and stray hairs and old skin on their clothing mixing with your own. You took each other home. But how close do people have to get before you really know they're there? Watching you. Carol started her period this morning, which always makes her a little crazy. Like she's got to treat herself. She spent over 70 quid in boots on cosmetics and toiletries and stuff. Tampons are so expensive. Carol doesn't think that women should have to pay, that the government should. After all, they hand out condoms to teenagers and syringes to junkies. That's what she told her mum. She didn't think of it herself, she read it in a magazine, but she nearly always agrees with the surveys. Carol mostly jumps into a cab, but sometimes we take the bus into town. She gets on the stop after me, which isn't any distance at all really, so no wonder bus drivers are angry all the time. But at least I can see her clearly. I can usually tell by the way she stands how she's feeling. That's how I know she came on today. Although she was a bit under the weather in Waitrose last night. She and Adam had a pre-packed pizza for supper. I hate mushrooms. I try to sit behind her when I can, but mostly it isn't possible. I love it when I'm close enough to smell her, especially when she's washed her hair and smells of Nicky Clark. If there isn't anyone behind us, and I'm feeling risky, I'll pick the loose hairs from her coat. I keep them in a special brush by the bed. I call it her brush. Mind you, she had her hair dyed last week and I nearly didn't recognise her. It used to be a mid-brown, but now it's blonde, almost white, so I'm having to start a whole new brush. I tried mixing the colours together, but it kind of looked like someone had come along and used her things. Looked a bit creepy, to be honest. Carol's 30 next month. She's so pretty and young looking, but you'd think she was turning 60 with the way she's depressed about it. Carol thinks changing the way she looks will make a difference, but it won't. I know it's nice wearing new clothes, but it doesn't last. She tried on so many things today, I had a problem keeping up. Trousers, skirts, tops, underwear. I only followed her into the big shops like Gap or Next, otherwise I'd wait outside. Sometimes, when she buys something I really like, I go back to the shop and I buy it for myself. Mostly affordables like a pretty bra or a pair of tights. But I don't mean I wear them. That would be stupid. Too small for me anyway. She's only an 8, sometimes even a 6. What she'd like to be is a 0, like actors and models and all those poor people dying in Africa. I don't understand why men wear women's clothing. They'd be running away from something. Themselves, probably. But as if wearing a pair of stockings and high heels for an hour or two is going to make any difference. It doesn't work for women. Women wear makeup and nice clothes all the time and they still feel terrible about themselves. They're either too fat, too thin, too black, white, short, tall. They're never right. Put it that way. Dad used to say that Mum was always right, but he was only teasing. The truth is, it didn't really matter what Dad said because Mum never heard him say anything nice anyway. Not that he didn't. Dad was always saying nice things. It's just Mum didn't want to hear them. That way she never had to live up to anyone's expectations. That's what she said. But Dad didn't have any expectations. That's what he said. Carol's got her own space in my wardrobe. Just for little things like tops and stuff. I can't really afford dresses, but if I really got to have something, then I use my credit card. My limit's 2,580, but I've only got 720 quid left. I'm not worried because Barclays are always writing to me, seeing if I'd like a loan. They seem quite keen, actually. Mostly, though, I live on income support. They're nice at the benefits office. Especially Mrs. Jamali, my caseworker. She's the biggest woman I've ever seen. She's got this huge bottom, but instead of feeling ugly, she squeezes into a pair of colourful leggings so that she can show herself off. You can even see the texture of her flesh through the material, like a mosaic or a jigsaw puzzle underwater. I really enjoy it down there. The benefits office, I mean. But I don't get called in as much as I'd like. Carol wants a baby. She and Adam, that's her husband, have been trying for ages now, but nothing's happening. Carol's definitely not the problem. She went to the clinic for a fertility test, so I'm afraid it's Adam's pipes that aren't working. I sat in the waiting room flicking through a load of leaflets. One of them said that women shouldn't smoke or drink during pregnancy. But I don't know whether it makes any difference or not, because I see mums on the estate smoking all the time, and they've always got loads of kids with them. That was 3 months ago now, the clinic. I'd already been seeing Carol for 7 weeks. It's amazing how time goes by. Nearly 5 months. She only lives a few streets away, But then one day, I saw her in town. Actually, in town. And it was like seeing her in a different place made it feel more like fate somehow. When Carol's having her period, I try to imagine what it's like, how she must feel. There were these little drawings inside the packet that tell you how to do it. The pictures are scary too, because it's like this poor woman suffered this terrible accident and she's only got half a body. I'd have had a picture of her face, you know, smiling, like there's nothing to worry about. Carol thinks a baby would round them off as a couple. But how could that be? 3's not a round figure. 3's about as scrappy as it gets. I know Mum, Dad and me were 3, but that was different. I'm just worried a baby would get in the way, that everything would change and I'd see much less of her. Anyway, she's not having a baby this month. I've always preferred women to men. As people, I mean. Although I like gay men too. Carol's got a brother called Andrew, who has a boyfriend called Bill. Carol's dad hasn't spoken to Andrew for almost 10 years because he's a puff. That's what he calls him, a puff. Andrew and Bill made a real fuss of Carol on her 30th. They took her to this fancy restaurant, which I couldn't afford, so I stayed outside. Although I did follow them into a Maffey for cake after. I thought that after lunch and cake, that would have been it. But we went to 3 different gay pubs afterwards. Andrew and Bill seemed to know everybody. Andrew said that what she and Adam need is a holiday. He thinks that that's why she's not getting pregnant. That he's too stressed. Because it's not like Adam's infertile. He got a girl pregnant when he was at college. She didn't have the baby though, she had an abortion. Carol had an abortion too when she was 15. She got an infection, but it didn't do any lasting damage. Although it did teach her to be more careful, so she went on the pill. I think the pill is terrible because it messes around with the chemicals in your body, and that can't be right. That's why I stopped taking my medication after Mum died. Bill said that she and Adam could have used his flat in the Canaries, but it's about to be refurbished. I started to daydream. I've still got loads of credit on my Barclay card, and I thought how fantastic it would be to go on holiday to a faraway place. I nearly went abroad once, just after Mum died. The doctor suggested I had a holiday to help me get over it, so I got these brochures for Spain. I even applied for a passport, but something got mixed up because of a strike or something, and it took over 5 months before I got my passport back. By then I didn't want a holiday. Once I overheard someone say that if you look like your photograph in your passport, then you're too sick to travel. I look insane in mine. I only ever had one proper holiday with Mum and Dad. We stayed in a caravan park, right on the seafront. I loved it when Dad carried me on his shoulders, and we'd walk along the front, the waves lapping against his shins, and he'd pretend to stumble, but catch me just in time, and we'd shriek with laughter. I felt like nothing in the world could hurt me, not so long as Dad was there. Once I caught this fish in my bucket, but Dad told me to throw it back as all life is precious. Not all life, Dad. And Mum looked so beautiful in her white dress, which had these little flowers on it like polka dots, as red as her lips. Mum had the softest green eyes and the sweetest, most infectious laugh. Dad and me tickled her, and when she giggled, her eyes dazzled and her teeth shone in her mouth. And then she lay on her back and I climbed into her arms and wiped the laughter tears from her cheeks. And then Dad wrapped his arms around both of us and I figured that's who we were. This is our family. Everything was fine then. I was standing at the bar having a Coke when a man smiled at me. I thought he must be looking at someone else, so I turned round, but there wasn't anyone there. He motioned if I wanted a drink, but suddenly I felt frightened, and so I shook my head. He shrugged and joined his friends. I felt really sick. Like I had this bubble in my throat, only the bubble felt hot. It was nice, but it was like I'd swallowed a swarm of bees. And then I felt sad that I might have upset him. So I tried to catch his eye again in a casual way, but he didn't see me. Suddenly I felt really alone, and the bar was too noisy and smoky and I had to get out. I looked for Carol, but she wasn't there. None of them were there, and then I really got upset. I felt like I'd let everyone down. But it was Carol's special day after all. Carol's got a new panty line because she's bought herself a designer bikini that's cut too high. She usually uses a cream, but not this time, because she's got a rather nasty rash, which means she must have used one of Adam's disposable razors. It looks ever so sore. The first time we went swimming, I didn't go in because I didn't know that's where we were going, so I just watched her from outside. I only stayed for a moment though because there was a man hanging about and he looked a bit creepy. I thought maybe he was a creep, you know, like he enjoyed hurting women. So I kept an eye on him to make certain he didn't follow Carol, but he didn't. He walked up the hill, back to the hospital. Her skin looks so pale under the water even though she's been using a sunbed. I like to lie on the bottom. If I hold my breath for long enough and time it just right, Carol will swim close by, right over me. She's got these two small scars on the inside of her thighs. When she was in college, she was going out with a boy who was a bit of a nutter when he got drunk. They had a big fight and he tried to burn her with a cigarette. Then the hot end fell off and landed between her legs. Carol was really self-conscious about the scars, but you can hardly see them, not unless you're up real close. About a month ago, she got friendly with this man. I'd noticed him a few times in the pool looking at her. Then one night he swam over to her and said something that made her laugh. And then they chatted for a bit, and the next thing they're having a hot chocolate from the machine. She met him in a pub in Crouch End soon after, and they drank almost 2 bottles of white wine. I was a bit sick. When he went for a wee, I followed him. Up close he smelt tobacco and aftershave. When he finished weeing, he didn't wash his hands. He just watched himself in the mirror as he lit a cigarette like he was a big star. Then he went back into the pub. Carol asked for a cigarette, which he took out of the packet and lit before handing it to her, and I thought, that's the hand you used to have a wee with. Carol told her friend Mandy that she wanted to prove to herself that she could still attract a man. Mandy told her she was treading really dangerously, and I agreed. Anyway, Carol said she had no intention of letting anything serious happen, although they did kiss in the pub, but she didn't tell Mandy that. It's over now anyway. He's not been back for a swim since, and I know for a fact she's not seen him again. But a kiss is still a kiss. Carol's really fed up with Adam at the moment because he's tired all the time. When he gets in from work, all he does is plonk himself in front of the telly. What he really needs is a holiday. We're all agreed about that. Andrew, Bill, Mandy, Carol and me. So as a special surprise, Carol went to Tom's Cook's and booked a holiday for the two of them on a Greek island called Skiathos. But when Adam found out, he was really annoyed. He said that any island that small with an airport is going to be too touristy and full of 18 to 30-year-olds. Carol got really upset and went to her mum and dad's, which is in the Elephant and Castle. We got the tube and she cried all the way, but nobody said a word.
Stand clear of the closing doors.
In the evening, her and her mum went to this pub and they got really drunk. Her mum was annoying this table full of men who were doing a quiz. She'd shout out the wrong answers or say something rude. And then Adam called Carol on her mobile phone, but Carol made a big show of switching it off and her mum said, "Good for you." Adam was waiting outside her parents' house when Carol showed up. Carol wasn't very nice to him at all, but then her mum got involved, making her finger in Adam's face. Then her dad came out and took charge. He was really scary. He's only small, but he's built like a bulldog. Carol doesn't get her looks from her dad, that's for certain. He told her mum to get indoors, and she did without a word. Adam was really embarrassed, but Carol's dad just shook his head and laughed and said, "Women." And then Carol got into the car and Adam drove home. There's a girl in the brochure that looks like Mum did when she was young. She's sitting by a pool, wearing a black bikini, and she's smiling at this man, who I guess is her husband, who's about to dive into the pool. If I look at the picture for long enough, I can almost feel the sun on my face. Only I'm 8 years old, when everything's fine, and Dad's calling me into the water. It hasn't stopped raining for the whole of Christmas. Carol and Adam went to stay with his parents in Scotland, and they won't be back until the new year. Carol's dad didn't like her being so far away from London, what with her being pregnant and everything. But Scotland's got hospitals, and it's not like she's going to have the baby this week. Baby's not due for another 4 months. Sometimes when it's cold and wet and I'm feeling really down, I look through my holiday photos of Skiathos. I'm not in any of the pictures, which is a pity, because it means there's still a part of me that can't believe I was actually there. But I was. I don't have a single photo of me anywhere, except the picture in my passport. Mum burned them all when she was ill. What scares me sometimes is that maybe the little boy I saw in the window, you know, smiling back at me, wasn't actually me. I couldn't bear the thought of not seeing Carol for 2 whole weeks, so I went to the travel agents and booked myself a holiday. It was dead simple. I only went for a week, and I wasn't on the same flight as Carol, but that was okay because the stewardesses were really nice. I loved flying. I wasn't scared in the least. It just made me feel closer to Mum and Dad. Those first few days were really strange. I felt so mixed up inside. On the one hand, I was desperate to find Carol, and then I'd get distracted because there was so much to see and I'd forget about her altogether, which is just terrible. One night I really cried, but in the room next to mine was this old couple from the northeast, and they knocked on the door. I thought I was going to be told off, but they'd made me a cup of tea. Len didn't stay long because they were flying back to Newcastle the next day and he had to pack. But Val sat up with me and we chatted. I told her about how I missed Mum and Dad and how I was lonely, and she said I should get myself a girlfriend. But I didn't mention Carol. It felt so good just talking to someone. And then she gave me this big cuddle and I started crying all over again. And all I wanted to do was to go back to Newcastle with them. But I didn't say anything. I should have said something. The next day I watched the planes taking off. I wasn't sure which flight they were on, so I watched all of them, just so I could make sure I said goodbye properly. I only spent 2 days on the beach with Carol, although mostly I'd sit up by the bushes. But if I wanted to swim, I'd walk past her so my shadow would move along her body. Once when Adam was at the bar and she was all sleepy, I stood over her for a moment. I was wearing sunglasses so no one could see my eyes, and I moved my head around pretending I was looking for someone, but I never took my eyes off Carol. Not for a moment. My head cast a shadow on her tummy, and it was like the silhouette of a baby. Our baby. And when she breathed slowly in and out, it was just like our baby was moving. On the Wednesday night, I hung around the hotel grounds, hoping to see Carol wearing something beautiful, but she stayed inside. Even though it was quite late, some boys were still up, messing about by the pool, so I watched them instead. This man saw me and came over and said something in Greek. Didn't have a clue what he was talking about. Then he started shouting and pulling these faces like I disgusted him. Then he pushed me over. I was so scared I ran away along the beach. I was crying and my heart was thumping like it was about to pop. And then I fell onto my face and it suddenly dawned on me that there I was in Skiathos. That I'd actually followed Carol all the way to Greece. And then it was like I heard these voices, and somewhere amongst them was Dad's. I tried really hard to hear what he was saying, but he just gave me this big smile instead, and it was me who said aloud, "This isn't right, son. This isn't right." That's when I made up my mind never to see Carol again. When I got back to England, I went straight to the library and looked at a map of Newcastle. I tried to imagine where Val and Len lived, but there were so many streets. So I got my photographs developed instead. And although I'd not taken a picture of Val, I had photographs of all the planes taken off the day they left, and I knew she had to be on one of the flights. Those pictures really helped me, and I carried them around with me everywhere. They helped me to remember the big cuddle that Val had given me, and how she said I should get myself a girlfriend. But for me that meant letting go of Carol first. And although it was really hard sometimes, I still managed to go nearly 2 months without seeing her. And then one day, when I wasn't looking, she sat right down behind me on the bus. I could see her face in the mirror, and all the old feelings came flooding back. She must have run for the bus because she was panting, and I could feel her breath on my neck, and it smelt of tobacco. And although I don't like smoking, I breathed in through my nose and my mouth at the same time so I could taste her breath. I could taste her hair, her skin, her flesh. And as I took even deeper breaths, it felt as though I was swallowing her up. And then her phone rang and Carol talked about being pregnant. I was so shocked because I didn't have any idea. And all I could think of was the shadow of our baby on her tummy. And I thought, our baby. Well, it isn't, of course, but it made me realise that I'd neglected Carol, and that made me feel so bad. And we're all doing our bit. Adam's working like a madman, earning extra money. Her mum's picking up little bits and bobs from catalogues. Her dad's getting the house prepared, turning a little box room into the nursery. And me, just making certain that there's always someone there, keeping an eye on her, taking care of her. She'd have had the baby by now. Boy or girl, I don't know. At that age, what difference does it make? Or how heavy it is? Give or take a couple of ounces, a baby, whichever way you look at it, is small. Why not just write small? I've called the hospital at least half a dozen times, but they won't tell me anything. Talk about paranoia. I just wanted to make sure that Carol was all right. I couldn't have sat in on the berth. How'd you do that? Watch someone you love in distress, screaming and crying because it feels like they're about to explode. Like watching someone you love die. But it's not like you're hanging on to them like it's Mum, kissing her and telling her that you love her and that there isn't anything to forgive. It's just a horrible spectacle. I fell apart when Mum died. Not like when Dad died, when I didn't allow myself to cry. I wanted to, but I couldn't take the chance because who'd have looked after Mum? I think what hurt me most was when she said how sorry she was for being a bad mother. But I didn't know what she meant. She had her troubles, what with her nerves and hormones and things, but she was never bad. She never said anything bad anyway. Maybe what she meant was that she never thought nice things about me. Don't really believe that, but how do I know? I should call the hospital again. Find out how Carol's dad is too, poor man. He was in the attic when his heart collapsed. He fell right through the ceiling and into the little nursery. He missed the cot, but all the shelves got pulled off the wall and there's dust everywhere. He's worked so hard on that house. He wanted everything finished before the baby arrived, but then he went and fell through the ceiling and wrecked the nursery. He was in a pathetic state when they got him into the ambulance. The men were trying to give him oxygen, but he was struggling and punching out, making it worse for himself because all he wanted was to fix the damage he'd done. They even tied him to the stretcher. But he was moving around so much, the straps came loose, and he fell off and bumped his head on the pavement. Carol was in an even worse state, screaming hysterically, hanging onto her mum's arm when all of a sudden her waters broke. I thought she'd weed herself. The ambulance men suddenly didn't know what to do. And then the mist cleared and they took control, taking care of both Dad and daughter. The rest of us hung around for a bit, just long enough to catch ourselves feeling awkward, and everyone just slipped quietly away. Where her waters had broke had made a little pool, so I found some tissue in my pocket and soaked it up as best I could. I put it in the freezer compartment when I got home so it wouldn't go off. I mean, they do it with embryos and frozen vegetables and things. I guess it'd be all right. I should have just left it where it was. In all the commotion, the front door had been left open, and when no one was around, I let myself in. I had a wee in the toilet downstairs. Then I had a look at the nursery upstairs. Even with the shelves all collapsed and the dust, I could still see that Carol's dad had made a lovely job of it. Anne was going to have to get someone to fix that hole in the ceiling, mind. It was strange wandering around the house, as I recognised so much of it. The toaster and kettle from Argus, her green toothbrush from Londis, the 2 pebble lamps from Habitat. She'd been feeling a bit depressed that morning and had gone into town for some retail therapy. That's what she calls it. And she met Andrew for lunch. He was really upset because his dad had phoned him and told him to keep away from Carol and the baby when he arrived because of AIDS. But you don't get AIDS like that. Besides, Andrew doesn't even have HIV. Andrew never even gets sick. He's in the gym nearly every day. He's got muscles everywhere. She's got loads of clothes in her wardrobe. More than I could ever afford anyway. Not unless I won the lottery. Carol does the same numbers every week. 10, 12, 17, 30 and 31, which are all birthdays, and number 48, which is the number of her parents' flat. Height 5'3", bust 32C, waist 22, hips 32, dress 6, shoes 2, blood type rhesus negative. It's funny what you remember about someone. Once Carol was on the night bus. She'd been out drinking with her girlfriends when suddenly she threw up. It seemed to catch her by surprise, certainly caught me by surprise, because she was sick all over her trousers, the orange pedal pushers from Gap. I threw mine away when I got home because I thought she would too, but she must have put hers through the washing machine because they were hanging up in her wardrobe. It's nice that Carol can still surprise me. There's a photo in a silver frame on her dresser that took my breath away, because it's a photo of our holiday in Skiathos. She's having a henna tattoo painted onto her shoulder. She looks really playful, teasing these kids who are just standing there watching. But if you look past the kids, you can see me. I'm in the picture, in the background, coming out of the supermarket with a big tin of biscuits. Looks like I'm standing right next to her. I think we look great together. I didn't like to take it, but I really wanted the picture. So I thought if I did something in return, it wouldn't be like stealing. So I tidied the house up, and then I gave the bathroom a wipe with Mr. Muscle. I had a quick last look round just to make sure everything looked nice, and then I put the picture under my jumper and let myself out, making sure the door was properly shut. It's nice to come back to a tidy house. I should call the hospital again. It's been a terrible few weeks. What a mess. It began with a funeral which I should never have gone to. I knew it had upset me, seeing Carol like that. But it was nice seeing Andrew again. He and Bill broke up though, which is a pity. Andrew messed everything up by sleeping with someone else. He said it didn't mean anything, but it did. It meant that Bill threw him out. Carol had been staying at her mum's. She looked ever so tired when she left the hospital. She was in labour for over 30 hours, and then the baby got distressed and the doctors had to do an emergency C-section. She's not said anything yet, but she's not going to like having a scar down there, that's for certain. When the coffin was carried in, there was this real hush. And then I started crying because I was thinking of Dad. He was cremated too, but there wasn't a headstone, so I found one with our surname on it and made do with that. Sometimes I pick flowers and leave them in this little vase. And then one day this woman showed up and asked me who I was. I blurted out I was the man's son. She looked ever so surprised. I didn't know whether she believed me or not, but I panicked and ran away. I've never forgiven myself for that, putting doubt in that poor woman's mind. Once, when I was playing over the crematorium, I found this mound. At first I thought it was just rubbish, like leaves and stuff, so I rode my bike over it. But when I had a closer look, I could see it was ashes and bones. Sometimes I find small pieces of jaw and bits of teeth all fused together like melted plastic. That mound must have been the ashes of thousands of dead people. Strangers, all mixed up together. I was 8 when Dad killed himself. Chemists don't sell aspirins by the barrel load anymore. In the old days you could buy enough aspirin to last a lifetime and nobody would give it a second thought. You'd think an alarm bell would sound somewhere. It's like buying a lorry load of crisps. But that would raise an eyebrow. That someone would ask you if you were having a party, and yet nobody thought to ask Dad what he was planning on doing with 500 aspirins. Swallow them, along with a bottle of brandy so I can die on the bathroom floor. I'd run all the way home from the park because those boys were chasing me, and all I could think of was that it would be all right when I got in because Dad would be there. But he wasn't. He was dead. On the bathroom floor. Mum was sitting on the toilet holding a note. She tried to play it down and said there wasn't anything to worry about. That Dad was dead, but I wasn't to worry. Didn't make any sense to me. I could see there was plenty to worry about. And then Mum scrunched up the note and dropped it in the toilet. Even though I could see it was written to me. To Warren. I never did find out why Dad killed himself. I asked Mum when she was dying if it was because of me. But she said she couldn't remember. That she thought it had something to do with owing a lot of money. I never went to Dad's funeral, so we never got a chance to say goodbye. Once I was sitting on my bed, crying, and Mum asked me what the matter was. I said that I missed Dad, but she just said, in a nice way, that there wasn't any need for that. So I never cried for Dad after that. Not until Mum died all those years later, when there wasn't anyone to stop me. And I felt really guilty, like I'd let everybody down. But the truth is, I was so scared after Dad died, especially when Mum went to the bathroom, I really panicked. I'd get so scared that she'd never come out again. I didn't want what happened to Dad to happen to her. Just the sound of the bathroom door closing was enough to make me sick. I'd sneak a look through the keyhole and make sure that she was still alive. When she was on the toilet, that was okay because I could see her face. But when I couldn't see her, that was just terrible. I'd just listen, imagining all kinds of terrible things. She was killing herself in all these different ways. And then I'd hear my heart banging in my chest and I'd think I was going to die. Right there outside the bathroom. And then Mum would find me and I'd always be remembered as a peeping Tom. Which I'm not. When I was 12, Mum got sick with her hormones. She'd hear voices in her skin, or just make up strange things. Like the time she got it into her head that our neighbours had turned into zombies. One day, after she saw me talking to Mrs. Jennings, she found the bits of teeth and jaw in my pocket from the cemetery and became so hysterical I thought she was going to die. Right there. And that it was all because of me. But she didn't. She died 26 years later in hospital, frightened and confused because her memories kept bumping into the tumour that had grown inside her head. I know what Carol's going through right now. What it's like to lose someone you love. After the funeral, we went back to the house. Carol's mum had made sandwiches and everyone said what a good spread it was. But it wasn't. The fillings tasted like death. All the men, even me, got together and made a big toast to Carol's dad, saying how he was one of the best. Someone kept filling my glass with whiskey. It was horrible. Carol and Andrew found it really hard and stayed out of the way. They went into their mum's bedroom and just lay on the bed, crying. Max made a big difference because he was a brand new baby, and it gave everybody a reason to change the subject and talk about babies rather than death. Adam came over and stood right next to me and I nearly died. He seemed more out of place than I did. Max was in a carry cot in the dining room. Someone had closed the glass doors, but you could still make out people's shapes through the ripples. It made them look like phantoms. Max was fast asleep when I looked into the cot. He was all bubbles and air. He was on his tummy, so I touched his little head. It felt hollow, like a chocolate egg. It made me shiver to think how fragile he was. He smelt funny too, like he'd been washed in sour milk. I wanted to see his face though, so I picked him up, but his head dropped back. I thought his neck was going to snap. He didn't cry though. And then he opened his eyes and he looked straight at me. I nearly had a heart attack. He gave me such a fright. He no more belonged than any of us. I felt so sick. And it wasn't just the whiskey and the grief and all. It was Max himself. I can see that Max isn't Adam's baby. I can see that Max's father is the man from the swimming pool. The big shot in the toilet mirror. The man who doesn't wash his hands after he has a wee. I thought my legs would give out. I felt so sad for Max. But I smiled and I kissed him on his head to let him know that it was okay. That I knew who he was. That I recognised him, even though he was lost and bewildered and didn't really belong. And that I would take care of him. I don't remember how it was we got back here. But I do remember crossing over the river. And I also remember this old lady saying what an adorable baby he was. And then she went and spoilt it by saying that he had my eyes. He doesn't even have Adam's eyes. He has his father's eyes. A dim reflection in a toilet mirror. I was so shocked when Adam and Carol's mum made this appeal on television. On the local news first, then nationally the next day. They sat behind this huge table surrounded by police officers, reporters and cameras and stuff. It was Adam who did all the talking though. He was ever so calm. I was glad about that because it meant that he was controlling his stress. And a press conference has got to be stressful, especially when it's your baby that's been snatched. The policewoman held up this photo-fit picture that was supposed to be me. But even I didn't recognise it. How pathetic is that? I hate being alone. It was different when I had Max, even though it was for such a short time. I hadn't thought any of it through, how to take care of him. But for the most part, I trusted my instincts, and I got a book out of the library on baby care. I made Max a bed in one of the cupboard drawers and lined it with Carol's clothes. Soft things like her panties and tights and a cashmere top. I know they didn't smell of Carol, but I thought he might like a feminine touch. We had such a good time. He was so receptive to sounds and colours and stuff. Or maybe it was just reflexes, but it was still incredible to watch. But bath time was the best. We used the sink in the kitchen. I cleaned it out properly and lined it with a mat so it was nice and soft for him. Once when I was turning him over, his little arms and legs started to swim. He wasn't even a week old and he was learning to swim. And then it all went wrong. I told myself that I'd taken Max to look after him, but I knew that wasn't really true. I took Max because I needed him to take care of me. And you know something? He did just that. He'd watch me, and he'd smile, and my heart would pound from the pure simple pleasure of being noticed. But then he got food poisoning. He was in such a terrible state. He couldn't even keep water down. I tried everything I could think of, but he just seemed to get weaker and weaker. I wondered whether I should call somebody, but that made me even more terrified, because I didn't know anybody. I wished I'd gotten Val and Len's number in Newcastle. She'd have known what to do. And I became hysterical. I started screaming and hurting myself. Once some lads were playing their music really loud, but people complained and so the council evicted them. You're not allowed to play your music loud. But if you scream hysterically because your heart is breaking, then everybody leaves you alone. And that made me even more mad, that nobody really cares. And me too, because there I was caring for Max by killing him. That really shook me up. And then I remembered when I was a kid in school, sitting at the window looking out, and then again all those years later at the sorting office, saying how we'd take care of each other because there wasn't anybody else. But then all of a sudden I realised there was somebody else. Max. He was right there in the middle of the two of us, fighting for his life, trying to get our attention, but failing. And then Dad showed up, right here in the flat, and he couldn't believe what was happening. But without being angry, he wrapped Max in his blanket, put him in my hands, and the next thing I know, I'm rushing down the street to the hospital. But I didn't know where it was I was supposed to go, and I ended up at the department where Mum had died. Then this nurse saw me in the state I was in, and she saw Max too, and without saying a word, she snatched him out of my hands. I slipped away before the police arrived. Max is fine now. He's a tough little nut. The hospital said he was badly dehydrated and in need of a good feed, but there wasn't any lasting damage. When I got back home, I went straight to the bathroom cabinet and found my pills. So I've started my medication again, which has passed its expiry date, but that's okay. And then I started to think, why not take a leaf out of Dad's book and take the whole lot? Just quietly slip away. So for the last couple of weeks, I've been putting my house in order, taking care of everything so there ain't any loose ends. I wrote a letter to Mrs. Jamali at the benefits office, thanking her for being so kind and for all the income support I've received, and I won't be signing on again, as from today. I also said I thought she was beautiful and she should wear a thong instead of pants because you can see the line. I was going to write to Carol too, apologising for everything, that I was sick but now I'm okay. But Carol's better off not hearing from me. Besides, she's busy with this book she's writing with a journalist. She's always being asked questions about babies' clothes and new pushchairs and stuff. Carol's got opinions and everything, but they're not her own. I recognise most of them from the magazines she reads, and some of them are really, well, stupid. There was this whole series of pictures of her brother in a rival tabloid. Made him sound like he was a pervert. They called him the skeleton out of Carol's closet. They even set him up, took a picture of him with his arm around a lad's shoulder, but the lad was only 15. Poor Andrew. But everyone loves Carol, especially the public, whose imagination she's caught. That's what tabloids say, that she's Britain's bravest mum, what with the trauma of having her baby snatched on the day of her father's funeral. When they put it like that, it made me realise what a terrible person I am. Sometimes, depending on what the story is, there's my photo-fit picture, right there on the same page as Carol. It's a reminder to me that I'm not anybody, that I don't belong. I'm inconsequential. And that's what makes me a danger, because who will watch me? Occasionally there's a photo of Adam too, but he doesn't like all the fuss and he's put his foot down as far as Max is concerned. No more pictures. Adam wants them to get back to being as they were, but that's not going to happen. I can see Carol leaving Adam, and Max, because she belongs to everybody now. It means more to her than anything, that does, being recognised wherever she goes. And I'm okay too, now. And I'm not the least bit scared of dying. Or maybe it's just the pills playing with my mind. When I close my eyes, I can hear the sea. And I can see my dad waiting for me on the beach. It feels so good. He waves and I wave back in that exaggerated way that all kids do. Dad's sitting on his favourite rock, grinning like an idiot because, like me, he's happy again. He's been looking out for me for weeks now, making sure I don't slip up again. I'm still Dad's little boy. And I'm not too big to sit on his shoulders either. He'll take off his shoes and socks, roll up his trousers, and we're paddling the sea. And he'll make believe that he's going to drop me, but he won't. We'll have a good laugh about that. Then he'll sit and watch me messing about in the sand, digging holes and building castles. And although I can feel the sun on my back and the tides coming in, he won't let any harm come to me, because he won't take his eyes off me. Never again. Dad isn't going anywhere. He promised me. And he promised me too that on the beach there are no dark corners, just sunshine. Sunshine, illuminating everybody's beautiful face. And then we catch our breath, me and Dad, because there along the beach, walking slowly towards us, wearing a white dress with those little red flowers, we'll see Mum. Only she'll be well again, smiling a big smile. Her soft, beautiful eyes replenished with hope, full of life, full of love. And we'll all sit together on the beach, a precious little family, listening to the waves, watching the sun go down, Mum, Dad and me, just the three of us, young, happy, safe, and we'll never be lost, and we'll never be scared, and we'll never be alone, none of us, ever again, at least. That's the way I see it. That's the way I see it.
In Walk Right By Me by Christopher C. Harris, Warren was played by Gary Oldman. The director was Douglas Urbanski and the producer was Claire Grove.